Hello and welcome to the IGN UK podcast. I am Alex, and this week I'm joined by Alicia.
I mean, you're pointing at Joe.
I know.
You failed. This is like when you look at a thing that says green and it's in red.
See, I was waiting for some sort of, I don't know, punchline.
Just say hello.
Okay, hello.
And
hi.
also, I was going to call you Joe Powers then.
Please do. After last week, after our love bite tests, we took it to the next level. Me and Rory, after biting each other in fits of passion, have decided to tie the knot. So I've taken his name.
I listened to last week's podcast. I tried to fathom out whether you were talking about whether to buy a PS Pro or not. Didn't really get much information on that.
Didn't happen.
Although I did get...
I wrote it off.
It sounded like I was back in the playground at school.
Was there a lot of chat about love bites in your playground?
Well, I think that's the last time I've ever heard anybody talking about love bites.
That's
was back at school.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
It's not... I didn't
What
think
about
it was...
at uni? I feel like it was a thing at uni.
So I never went to university.
I didn't know that.
University of Life. We didn't talk about love bites there. No.
Ever heard of a streets of technic? That's where I went.
But I know we're talking about love bites for the second week running.
Yeah.
But I haven't had the
I've got an itchy neck now. You make me feel weird.
You haven't got your collar up.
Yeah, could do. Vampire it.
They come in like polo necks.
It's not a thing that consenting adults do, is it?
I consented, and I'm just about an adult.
yeah, maybe.
Depends how. It depends. This is very much like a philosophical discussion of whether I'm a child or not. I don't know. Is it better if I'm a child? Sounds worse.
That's weird.
Sounds much worse. You're talking about it on the playground. I don't know what was going on at your school.
Well,
on the streets.
But when you're like 15, 16, love bites are fairly standard, right?
I don't know. I wasn't getting love bites when I was...
When you're in your mid-20s...
I'm making up for it.
Right, okay. So where do you stand on love bites?
Where do I stand on love bites?
Yes.
My absolute opinion on them.
You don't do them by standing on them, for a start.
Standing
Next week I'm going to come in with a boot print across my neck.
I've been doing it wrong. Standing on my wife's throat. I love you, darling.
Oh my God. Fucking hell.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Not sure how I can top that image,
grotesque.
Alex.
So, love bites.
Love bites. I have had them. And they really hurt.
Really?
Yes. No, if you know... Oh, okay, maybe this is... Oh, now this is going into my past relationship, which takes us down... Basically...
He was a snake. It got pretty crazy.
No, he wasn't
Henry the Hoover.
snake. He was a limpet.
Oh, my God. For a small time, I had a polygamous relationship with an entire boat's worth of barnacles.
And I wore the story on my skin. No, it was...
Oh, my God.
He basically had this thing where we'd do, like, bets with each other all the time, and sometimes the forfeit, it had to be something publicly humiliating.
Oh, my God.
And so he always had his forfeit for me was, like, love bites on my neck, and he would, like, go hard, and there'd be, like... thick purple like bruises on my neck.
Jesus
for, like,
Christ,
2 weeks.
that's not a love bite.
Yeah. So
That's
that was my relationship.
Oh my God.
Some weird,
And you're not still together?
No.
Right.
some strange, like, kinky horror. What's going on there?
It wasn't kinky in the slightest.
Sounds like it was for him.
Did you ever give back?
Oh, I mean, I gave as good as I got, but I didn't quite have the suction power.
I accidentally ripped his jugular out. That's why we're not together anymore. This got started. This is weird.
Yeah.
What's
How
going
are you
on?
going to segue this, Alex?
Dishonored 2, right?
You stab people in the neck a lot.
You do.
It's the love bite from the
There's
outsider.
probably quite a lot of bruising after fights in Dishonored.
Oh, yeah, I choked loads of people out in that game. They got bruised necks all over.
What about the guy whose head you put in a telescope?
I did put a guy's head in a telescope. That went bananas on
Giving
Facebook.
you credit.
Thanks, man.
Because I know that you feel sad that you haven't got the credit you feel like you deserve it.
Oh, it's like 1 million views, I think. Yeah. I don't know.
You don't want money, you just want followers.
I just want followers.
What's your Twitter handle?
Like
Joe?
I'm not
Jesus.
telling anyone. They have to find me. Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything. Yeah, Dishonored 2 is brilliant. And not just when you get a glitch where a man's head turns into a telescope.
Yeah.
That was good.
So
have you played it yet?
No, I played Dishonored 1. I haven't had time to play 2 because I'm still finishing Battlefield. But I really enjoyed it. But I never got to the end. I think the world was interesting, the game was interesting, but it never really grabbed me.
That's exactly how I felt about it as well.
Right.
And Dishonored 2
everyone is going nuts for Dishonored 2.
Dishonored 2 is a proper step up in my opinion.
It just goes deeper. It takes all of the kind of bare bones of the first game and fleshes it out with the level of detail that you find in terms of the level design.
Yeah.
What I really love about Dishonored 2 is every single level you go through, they've implemented a really unique gameplay mechanic, whether it's the idea of the Clockwork Mansion.
Greatest level I've ever played.
Incredible game design, like absolutely stunning, where you go through this mansion and the whole, like a Rubik's Cube, it reconfigures around you so you can pull levers and suddenly 1 minute you're in a ballroom style room and the next you're in a bedroom, and it's the everything has like shifted around you, and you can dive through the cracks as the wall's moving.
That's what I love about it. It's the fact that you could build, if you were a maniac, you could build like a working version of that house.
Yeah.
Like it is an actual model. There's none of that gameplay trickery where it's things just disappear into white boxed voids. Like that's not happening. This is an actual space they've made where you can get behind the scenes. And then, like you say, every little bit of detail adds to it. There's this sense of when you're walking around the mansion as it should be, the guy you're trying to get to and eliminate, Kieran Jindosh, which is a great name, Kieran Jindosh and his Clockwork Mansion, he talks to you, he's like, I know where you are. And he tells you about all the rooms you're in. He's like, I like to sit there and read and think of my next murder or whatever. As soon as you get outside, he can't tell where you are anymore. So he starts trying to flush you out by like taunting you and being a bit rude. And then eventually he just gets frustrated and he's just like, come on, get out, I want to find you. And like, you have this real sense of like trespassing and seeing behind where you shouldn't, like this whole like going behind the scenes in a play, like you shouldn't be there, and everything's crap behind there, but it's just fantastic.
Even that level, like we're just focusing on Clockwork Mansion because it's such an interesting piece of level design, and also
it's already out there, so we're not ruining it for anyone.
Exactly. And it was the 2-hour gameplay preview that we had. I played Clockwork Mansion twice with both characters for that one, and I never discovered the outside. I just thought that the inside of the mansion was a thing. And then I looked over and another journalist was like something hanging off a pipe somewhere. I was like, how on earth did you get there? And like, is it true like they had to like scale basically the outside, half fall down a cliff and then go along like some outdoor piping and
you can
stuff?
do it that way. I mean, like the easiest way I did it was like found a lever, pulled it, and as the world configured, did a dash and like flew between the cracks as it changed.
So it all exists.
It's all there.
But that's what
that is clever.
That's
it's
why
amazing.
it's interesting in that, the way that you discovered that outside was basically by, not taking it as a linear thing, by really exploring and pushing at the edges of the level, which was interesting.
And this is my whole reason for loving Dishonored 2 as much as I do. Like, I've played 4 of 9 levels. I've spent 14 hours playing that game. It's
is that because you're really bad at it?
I'm bad at it.
Right, okay.
Secondly, I just have to see everything. Yeah. I've just explored every nook and cranny that I can. I'm rinsing the whole world of every collectible I can find because it's just fun being there and seeing these little... It's almost like creating even boring places with not much to do have been done up like little tableaus. You can see, like, this is one bit, totally useless room. I think there was like some coins in it. And I walked in and it was the aftermath of a card game gone wrong.
Yeah.
And it's totally out of the way. And it's just this beautiful little scene of like, not beautiful. There's just all these murdered bodies around. And you can pick together this crime scene basically. Yeah. Just through them leaving stuff around and going, well, this room, we're not really going to use it, but someone's going to have to pass through it at some point. Right. Let's do something with it. And this is the whole game. They just tell these tiny little... They give you these clues towards things, and then sometimes they lead to something. So the best bit... my favourite thing about it is how it gives you the tools to experiment, but never tells you what to do with them.
Right.
You get all these powers. It gives you very little kind of idea of what they're for.
Yeah.
And this goes for like loads of little details. So there was one bit where I was walking around this place which is infested with blood flies, which are essentially big clouds of horrible things that will attack you if you walk past them. Yeah. The only way to get rid of them is to burn their nests. Right. I'd run out of incendiary arrows, so I was like, fuck, I can't get through. And as I'm walking out, I pass this, like, there's a sort of a bar, and it's like empty bottle, empty bottle, empty bottle, and then the last one just says Auburn's rum, flammable. Right. So I was like, okay, so I pick that up, I chuck it at the nest, and it burns down. I was like, brilliant, okay, so I clear out this place, and then I cross the road through the route I've cleared, and find myself in a blood fly infested doctor's office, and there's nothing flammable in there. I'm like, for fuck's sake, I can't do anything here. I look around, and then there's a bottle, and it's like chloroform bottles. I was like, okay. So I pick that up, and I chuck it, and all these blood flies just fall dead because they've been chloroformed. Yeah, it's like, okay. And this doctor's office is full of chloroform. Right. So I was like, So I could just use this.
Yeah.
So just pick that up, walk outside, see a guard walking under a balcony and just drop it on his head and he falls over. And I'm like, okay, sweet. So then I use my power called Domino, which links the fates of people.
Right.
So if you send one person to sleep, even if the other person's half a mile away, they fall asleep as well.
Right.
So I link the fates of all these guards. I just chuck one chloroform bottle at this guy and this whole area is suddenly open to me. And then that chloroform hits... The edge of that gas hits a civilian fishing in a river.
Yeah.
He falls into the river, and all these fish come in and just bite him to pieces. And then I was like, oh, that's how I get rid of those bodies. So I'm picking up these bodies and chucking them in the river. This is all because of one bottle of rum I found, and I understood all of these systems.
All the mechanics. That's amazing.
Incredible. And any other game would go, here's a thing, use it for this. And this is just like, just have fun. Just mess with it.
So you can obviously play it the straightforward way, but it's more fun just experimenting.
And at the start of the game, you can even turn down the chance to have any of the powers. You can play it as a straight vanilla stealth game.
If and you get a trophy
hardcore,
for that.
And you do. And it's just incredible, just the amount of stuff that it gives you to go. And it judges... The reason I didn't like Dishonored 1 so much is because it judges you for using its powers, particularly the violent ones. It kind of goes, you're a bad player, we're going to treat you badly for this. In this one, the only real hint of that is you get a thing that says you're playing high chaos. And occasionally... if you're playing as Emily anyway, you've got the clockwork heart from the first game, if you remember that. Sometimes you squeeze it and it's your mum's voice and it tells you off. And that's a bit annoying. I often just go, fuck off,
Shut up,
Mum.
Mum.
Put it back in my pocket. But apart from that, it doesn't feel like it's having a go. It's just kind of going, fuck it, you're a magical bastard, do what you want.
Have fun.
It's so rare to find a game as, hands off. To be like, go on.
Absolutely.
Deal with us.
It's incredibly well designed. I really love the level as well where you're in again, another mansion. It really loves mansions, but this one's ruined and you jump between two time periods.
Do we want to give away too much about that? I know they've shown it off at E3 before.
They have shown it off at E3. It's another example of really intriguing, without any spoilers, a really intriguing example of level design. So you have this ruined mansion that you're working your way through and it's empty and dark and dusty and there are, areas that are boarded up and windows. And then you've got a kind of shattered mirror in your right hand that through that you can travel to the to the past 3 years ago on the night of a really opulent party in the same mansion. And there are people and everything's lit up with gold and and just flitting back and forth between the two time periods means you can move through the mansion and be really clever in how you find and track down your targets. Just really interesting things like that every level has a twist.
It's like they're daring you to break the game as well.
Absolutely.
It's like giving you so much that you can just mess with and going, see what you can do.
Absolutely. Like each of these mechanics you could build a really interesting game around within its own right. That the whole game was to do with that, but they've just in 9 levels kind of put an interesting thing in each one, which is really clever. And I really love Emily's powers.
They're really cool.
Slinky and sharp and gorgeous, and you just flow through the space as shadow and kind of appear from nowhere. And I think one of the really frustrating things about the first game was that stealth powers weren't that strong. Corvo can blink everywhere, but a lot of his really interesting ones were just send a swarm of rats or possess a fish,
or stop time.
Exactly.
They were things we'd used before. They were just better implemented.
Absolutely.
Whereas Emily's feel quite new. I've never seen anything like Domino.
No, exactly. Domino's fascinating.
And how they link up. One of the only clues it gives you about Domino is that you can use another power, Doppelganger, where you create a version, like a decoy version of yourself. But then you can link the fate of that to someone else. So you can just stab yourself in the neck and it kills a guard who had nothing to do with you. Brilliant. What a great thing.
But that level you've just described sounds a lot like the one that's in Titanfall. Which I don't know if you played the campaign yet.
I've not played the campaign yet. We will be talking about that later.
But let's talk about it now.
Okay.
Unless there's something else that you want.
It's a feedback thing, but I'll just read this out. We'll just skip straight to this letter.
Let's skip to that.
We're doing early feedback.
James Isles says, "Hey guys, I've just finished the Titanfall 2 campaign and absolutely loved it. Have any of you played yet? If so, what did you think? I was really pleasantly surprised by the variety in the gameplay throughout," which is exactly what we were about to talk about.
So there is a level. Again, is it spoilery?
I think at this point, people keep talking about it. I would say, don't give away what the fabric of it is, but you can talk about the idea.
You flip, same thing. You flip between time to make your way through this level. I won't say any more than that. I think that's fair enough. But it's so cleverly done, and like the rest of Titanfall, it makes you feel so powerful because you're I'll give an example. But you'll be in the present day when you're getting attacked by monsters or whatever because it's been overrun.
Yeah.
So you flip back in time to when it was like this pristine kind of, I don't know what
it's like a research facility. Yeah.
But then the monsters aren't there, but the guards are there. So the guards are shooting at you, but then you haven't got these avatar monsters coming in. But what you can do is go into present day, get around the back of the guards because you see their ghost briefly. Go back in time, and then they're still looking for where you are.
And then it's got that really satisfying thing of like them all going, "Where the fuck are they?" Just like freaking out that this person's just appearing out of nowhere constantly.
And it's just amazing. But obviously, the thing that's great about it is not just the combat mechanic, but there's loads of kind of platform bits built into it where you've got to jump into something where there's nothing there, but flip back. So just as you appear. It is.
I think a lot of what people were really lauding Titanfall 2's campaign when it came out, all the stuff that made me really want to try it.
Yeah.
I think it all comes from that level.
Absolutely.
Because people were saying like, oh, it's like Mario Galaxy, it's like Nintendo throwing ideas out there. And it's not quite.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that like freshness. And I think actually Dishonored is kind of closer to that. But that level, when you see the stuff, the lengths to which they take that one idea, it's so brilliant.
And it is only used on that level. That's it. It's gone.
Got it for an hour, and that is
and that's it.
And there are some other really cool parts of it, like platforming bits, where they've taken the pilot's abilities to sort of wall run and really build some amazing stuff. But that's a little bit more prescribed, I guess. Is that yes, there are routes through stuff, but you kind of know where you're going.
Yeah.
It's like you see your route.
It's linear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are a lot of comparisons to be drawn between those two games as well.
That's really interesting.
Like Titanfall 2 has a level that reminds me of the Clockwork Mansion in its cleverness with an environment. So it's not the same idea by any means, but there's a level where you're in a sort of it's like building prefab villages.
Yeah.
And so you're in a giant construction, like on a giant production line, and you have to keep jumping into this village being built around you.
Like houses, you got walls going up, and then things like being built,
turf being planted down onto where you are, and then it like flips on its side, so you're on this inverted house as it's being built around you.
Yeah,
wow.
And it's got this idea of just kind of going. It's almost like watching game design happen. It's sitting in the middle of a level being built with you in it.
And it's not
incredible.
all, and like as you say, like it ends up like you end up sort of like running up the side of houses and stuff like
that. That's amazing. That's kind of like Doctor Strange style, is there?
I've not seen Doctor Strange.
It's got that. It's got the sense of like things aren't. It's a familiar situation, just kind of ruined. Yeah.
It's really interesting that there's that level of similarities between Dishonored and Titanfall, because I guess you could say in some ways you can play Dishonored like it's a first-person shooters and that you can go in all guns blazing, but
it doesn't want you to.
But it doesn't want you to, whereas like Titanfall, I just think of, it's a straight-up shooter. It's kind of cool that it's thinking outside the box.
It's the most fun I've had in a single-player shooter for as long as I can remember.
Wow.
It is fantastic. Yeah. Like it's a really, really clever thing. And as James says, like the variety is key to that. Like I think it feels like people are kind of coming to, and this is stupid, this is the kind of thing, the Victorians saying like, oh, nothing else could possibly ever be invented. But it feels like we're getting to the peak of thinking around these kind of campaigns where it's just going, what people want isn't a single idea. What they want is throwaway stuff with the base. As long as you nail the core feeling of a game. So Doom did this as well to a certain extent. I'm not sure it was as successful. But the core feeling of, I know all my powers and I know how to link them up and I can mess with them and that's it. But then giving you a game that around you constantly shifts the rules. That's way more fun than games that go, here's one gimmick.
Yeah, and you learn the pattern and then it's lather, rinse, repeats.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the beauty of Dishonored 2 is regardless of what character you play it with, because they're both very different in the way they handle, but it's taking their skill set and learning how to link them and move them and using the powers in different combinations depending on what the levels throw at you. And that's really interesting to make your gameplay style reactive rather than prescriptive.
Yep.
It's a really fascinating way to change player behaviour.
Oh, so good.
I think that was probably my only criticism of Titanfall is that when you're in the Titan itself and there are loads of kind of mini bosses all the way through. I know about not a dozen, but there are. I think it's got to be a
6
10
or
or something.
7.
Is it that right?
Or maybe there's a few more actually.
And they were fairly easy.
Yeah, I really thought. because I played on regular.
Yeah.
I never lost to one of those.
No. And I don't claim to be amazing in the Titan.
No.
I was much better as the pilot.
It feels like it's almost designed for hard mode, those bosses.
Yeah, maybe.
Like that you've got to properly have slug-in matches with them. But
Yeah.
I agree. That was a downer for me.
Yeah.
It does remind me of Zone of the Enders though, which I love. Which has the same thing.
It's been a long time since I played that game.
It's the thing that I love. I played the remaster when it came out a few years back, and the thing that I remembered that I loved is it gives you this like constant like rogues gallery of baddies who you've never met before.
Yeah.
And so it just has to establish them in about 10 seconds as just an arsehole. So they turn up and it's like, I'm the flying bastard.
Yeah.
And they do exactly the same thing in Titanfall. It's just like, by the way, this guy's a prick. Have fun killing him.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah! It's like just cartoon like storytelling, which I love. It's really entertaining and kind of, there's no pretense to it at all. It's not pretending to be anything other than just dumb and fun.
Because
really nice.
I genuinely don't normally enjoy campaigns and first-person shooters. Like I play them for the multiplayer, but campaigns I always just find really dull.
Right.
So you're selling me on the idea of Titanfall.
You will not find this dull. If you do, then you're dead inside. As simple as
and you
that.
have no soul, and you're
like my only concern is I don't know how well. Obviously both games reviewed really well, but Titanfall in terms of sales so far hasn't done spectacularly.
And in the UK, Dishonored has sold something like 40% less than Dishonored. Dishonored 2 is sold way less than Dishonored did. Again, remember that physical charts aren't necessarily the same as digital charts, and so who knows really? But it's a weird sign.
I think it's such a shame. And I hope that studios are still able to sort of innovate and do amazing stuff and be creative. Obviously, Titanfall was wedged between two of the biggest shooters ever.
You get the feeling
Battlefield.
I don't know about Titanfall. That seems a bit shaky. And even today we were talking about that. Glixel did an interview with Vince Zampella, and he sounds shaky on whether there's going to be a Titanfall 3.
But that's no fault of his own, or the studio's own. And that's like I guess when you leave something like Infinity Ward and EA comes, yep, we will fund your next project and give you everything, you're probably like, yeah, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And then apparently the Xbox exclusive was forced on Respawn.
Yep.
And then they get wedged between Battlefield and Call of Duty. It's
for no reason at all.
Yeah, that was really bad timing.
You'd feel pretty, I would, pretty fed up.
You get the feeling that Arcane are slightly more important to Bethesda. Like they feel a bit more like a vanity project. Like, even if they don't sell that well. They make Dishonored 2, and they're making Prey.
Yeah.
Like those are games that people want to
pretty
see.
Cool.
Yeah. And it also, it feels like literally Battlefield was EA's own game as well.
Oh, absolutely,
a week between them or something?
It's absolutely absurd.
Yeah, everything just comes out. We've been finding this over the last few weeks, and we're like, every day coming into work, so many games.
But that's even Watch Dogs is out, or came out this week.
Oh, God, yeah.
And I haven't really seen that much on that. Obviously, the reviews dropped, but in terms of actually seeing ads on TV, I think I've seen one maybe.
Yeah, there's something to be said about the pre-Christmas period. I get why they want to launch because you want your game under the stocking, but actually there was a little bit more spacing out in the year.
But it's narrower than ever because it used to sort of bleed into September and then through to December.
Yeah,
and I think there is Last Guardian's coming out in December.
Yeah.
But now it is literally
it's straight up November.
Yeah.
Like basically 4-week period.
Yeah, this is the weird thing, right? Like this is incredibly anecdotal evidence, but I was sort of vainly looking for the biggest stories of the year to see if I'd done any of them on our CMS the other day.
Of course you were.
Of course you were.
Yeah, not really. And
you're no Alex Osborne.
Absolutely not. The thing that I noticed was if you look at the most read reviews of our year, right up there, like maybe second or third is Doom.
Right.
Doom came out, March? Or dead period.
Yeah.
Everyone gave a shit. It got so much love.
Yeah.
I bet it's done really well.
I guarantee if Doom came out now, no one would care because it's sandwiched between other first-person shooters.
It's a great game, and they knew when to pitch it. Like, why wasn't Titanfall next March when everyone got bored of those two games?
Yeah, you're so right.
I agree, and maybe it'll see a resurgence in that prices will come down.
Yeah.
But especially with a game like that is so heavily reliant on multiplayer, if the server's dead, then
when there's 3 games all trying to be your multiplayer game of choice. And all
when
I'm playing is
Overwatch
Dishonored. And Overwatch exists.
Don't mention that game. Not allowed to.
Can't talk about it. Can't talk about Sombra in the update.
Yes.
Fuck you, 3v3's great.
I was going to say, you've got a legit excuse this week.
I know, it's Sombra, but it's fine.
We'd be talking about very granular things, wouldn't we?
I know. But the one thing is,
Hacking's
that
overpowered.
game is a fantastic beast.
Oh my god.
Can I?
Nice. Alicia didn't give a shit. Steamroller.
Fantastic Beasts. Are we talking about Fantastic Beasts?
I said that game is a fantastic beast.
I see what you did there.
Speaking of which...
Segway!
Oh my god. Just one day I want to work with people that just... I know. But
What do you mean people? Person.
Person on
One day I want to work with an Alicia who gives a shit about my segues.
I do enjoy the segues.
Yes, but by saying segue... Oh, anyway.
I'm sorry. I was drawing attention to your fantastic hosting
slickness.
abilities.
Thank you.
Really slick.
You beast.
Fantastic Beasts. Fantastic Beasts came out this week.
Yes.
And
It comes out tomorrow.
It comes out tomorrow.
Comes out
today if you're listening to the podcast on Friday. And it's a spin-off movie in the sense that it's not Harry Potter as we know it. It takes place 1920s America, and it tells the story of a guy called Newt Scamander who wrote a textbook that J.K. Rowling wrote for Comic Relief called Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which they talk about in the Harry Potter series as something that Harry, Ron and Hermione have at school. So this is Newt Scamander, who he's kind of a collector of exotic, rare, magical creatures, and he's in America to, for reasons, and he accidentally lets a few of them out of his case. So that's kind of like one of the plot lines, but there's actually multiple plot lines in this story. It's not as simple as that.
That's quite messy.
Yeah, it's like... I think it goes down the same road that Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was very much setting the scene of the world when it first came out. And so there's quite a lot of exposition and explanation and kind of, this is Hogwarts and blah, blah, blah. And actually, when you look at the story, not much actually happens aside from that final bit with the gauntlet at the end when you first meet Voldemort and he's out the back of Quirrell's head. But like, the rest of the movie is pretty chill. And like, Fantastic Beasts is a bit like that in that really, actually, when you kind of break it down, I'm trying to remember really what happened plot-wise.
He comes to America, 4 beasts get out of his case, he meets some friends, they go on a hunt for the beasts, and then some other people have quite bad times. Yeah. In a very small way.
Yeah, and then the movie ends.
And then the movie ends.
So it's pretty but there's lots of stuff through
like
there.
Ghostbusters.
It is a bit like, to be honest, there is a Ghostbuster element
it's in New York.
to it.
Right.
And there's probably someone that makes that noise, like Ecto-1. It's probably a beast.
So I have seen all the Harry Potter films and read all the Harry Potter books.
Show off.
Yeah, you have.
Yeah, exactly. But I could not give 2 hoots about
Fantastic
this.
Beasts.
So that's surely a concern for... Who is it, Warner? I think?
Yes, and it is tracking low.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think people give as much of a shit as they thought they would.
Yeah.
I was really excited, and I kind of got what I wanted. Like I think we've both agreed it's like a 3-star movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
We both, Joe and I, came away and we were chatting about it.
And we are both
yesterday.
Potter fans.
And we're both massive, Potter fans. We were like, it's like a solid 3 out of 5. It's made me go, I'm looking forward to the next one. The next one's going to be set in Paris. And hopefully we're going to delve deeper into, for me, what is the crux of the movies. And this isn't a spoiler because J.K. Rowling has come out and said the 5 movies are going to be based around this plotline.
5 movies?
Yeah, what's going to be 3 and now it's 5.
Yeah, it's going to be 5 of them.
Got 10 years of this, mate.
See, that is my fundamental problem with all this. The first movie's not even out yet.
Yeah.
Well, it is if you're...
Well, it's...
But do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to be invested in 5 movies. Like, it's too much.
That I think, is what she perhaps could have beefed up a little bit in this screenplay, making you really care about the characters and kind of enough to invest in the next 5. Because what it's going to revolve around is a guy called Grindelwald, who you might remember from the Harry Potter series. You're basically like, no. he's do you remember the whole idea of the Deathly Hallows?
Yeah, which book was that?
The Deathly Hallows.
Oh yeah, but no, I meant numbered.
Oh, I see.
7.
Was it?
7? Yeah. And the idea is that there's 3 objects that make you masters of death.
Yes.
And so Grindelwald was the original Dark Wizard, the precursor to Voldemort, who was also best friends with Dumbledore growing up. And Dumbledore, there's the suggestion that him and Grindelwald had a relationship together. And then there's this really climactic battle in the 1940s where Dumbledore kills Grindelwald. Well, no, doesn't kill, like, duels with Grindelwald. Grindelwald's put in a prison until the time of Harry Potter. But Grindelwald wanted to create this world where wizards came out of the shadows, made themselves known, and kind of ruled over muggles. So that's kind of what I think we're going to see. It's the lead up to that climactic battle.
See, that sounds interesting.
Versus Dumbledore. Exactly.
That sounds so boring to me. I don't want that at all.
Oh, no, I find that fascinating.
I don't see how that comes from a movie called Fantastic Beasts, though.
Totally agree. And a franchise that will be called that. It's probably going to be like Fantastic Beasts in Paris, the next one.
I hope it's called that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Like National Lampoon's on Vacation or something like that.
To me, I expected, when I first heard about this, and at the start of the film kind of gets towards this and then just gives up on it. I expected this to be Newt Scamander exploring the non-British wizarding world. So in this one, America, in the next one, Paris. And being a sort of like weird David Attenborough, Jane Goodall, having sort of rad, like sort of silly, roguish adventures around places that we wanted to go and see. Because Harry Potter is, to me, is a really exciting place. I'm one of those fantasy people who's always like, oh, how much can we kind of like think about how everything works in this world? I love feeling out the edges of that imagination. Yeah. That's why people love Game of Thrones, because everything feels consistent. They understand how this world works. And I love the idea of seeing New York and the little hints that it gives you that, like, American society, because of Salem and because of Puritanism and that fright, is actually way more locked down and sort of scared of being darker. Magical. Right. Whereas Britain's all kind of like free and easy because everyone's druids or whatever.
And it's tough because that's a strength and a weakness of the film, in that I think it's really interesting to explore a darker side of wizarding culture. And there's there's a really interesting aside where Newt just mentions, he's like, well, in America, you've got this silly law that not muggles can't marry wizards. It's illegal. And suddenly you're like putting this idea of, I guess, racism and,
it's like, it is a very thinly veiled apartheid.
Absolutely. There's all these dark metaphors where society is, what was happening in 1920s American society is very much reflected within the wizarding world. But it makes the world, when I think of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, as a colour, it's grey and brown, whereas the Harry Potter world, when you think of them, it's gold, it's the firelight glinting off the Hogwarts walls, it's the sconces and this really beautiful world that you just want to be like, it's so shiny and great. Like, there's not that sense of wonder in Fantastic Beasts. Yeah, and it's a shame because, you've got these, they try and do it with, there's this kind of segment where you're going through Newt's suitcase and meeting all the beasts. And I think that's meant to be this, look at this amazing world. And it's very nice and it's very cinematic, but it's not the same as that simple swish and flick Wingardium Leviosa class that you had in the first Philosopher's Stone.
But even, so I read Cursed Child on holiday. And even reading that, I thought, I'd love to go and see this. Like that, it took me straight back to that world in an instant, but a slightly different take on that world. It all felt like it was a continuation. I was like, this would be amazing. But like I say, I don't get that with Fantastic Beasts.
I definitely think
if it needed. I know that they've pushed it as a bit of, this is an extension of Harry Potter, but not that much.
No.
I mean, I genuinely think it's worth going to see. It just, if you're invested in the world and this, I read Pottermore and stuff. I'm such a Harry Potter nerd. I really love looking and delving deep into the world and finding out, the histories of certain characters and laws, and for a sense of colour, that's really fascinating. It's just, I think as the series goes on, J.K. Rowling is going to find a way to cohese it down or slim it down and have it more about one narrative thread.
Yeah, but they're going to go for the boring, it's a battle of good versus evil. It's just going to be like, we're just learning all this. All we're doing is filling in blanks that we already have.
But it's not good versus evil, because Gellert Grindelwald, it's not as simple. It's not a binary.
He's literally called a dark wizard.
He is called a dark wizard. But
you're losing this.
Like,
what's in a name?
There's a fairly strident moral judgment that she's made, and that's fine.
No, but we already know this about Grindelwald later on. We know that he has good in him because we've seen that with Dumbledore, and that we know that Dumbledore himself, he's set up in the Harry Potter books as like the archetypal good wizard father figure, actually turns out to be a little bit twisted.
Yeah.
Harry has PTSD in the wake of Voldemort coming back, and Dumbledore uses him as a puppet. Like, J.K. Rowling is good at dismantling things that she thinks that we're setting up to, bad guys becoming good guys and vice versa. Like, that's classic.
Shame she can't do endings, though.
But she really can't do endings.
Holy shit,
oh my
the ending
God,
of this film is bad.
This ending is so bad.
It's the most hilariously badly explained Deus Ex Machina you can imagine.
No, it really
is crazy. Like, it's on par with Star Trek Into Darkness, which I think is one of the worst endings I can ever think of. One thing that we haven't talked about at all, which is good, is I really like Newt and Tina, who are the kind of lead protagonists in this. Like, the way they're portrayed. Newt's, like, as we were saying before, he's very heavily implied to be on the spectrum.
Yeah.
Like, he's a very awkward... He freely admits to, like, not being able to make friends with people.
Yeah.
He's just difficult and strange. And for half the film, you don't really warm to him that much because he's just a bit rude to everyone. He's just sort of flitting around, just being like, I don't really care about your problems, which I really like. And then Tina, who's this sort of disgraced aura who works in the American MACUSA, which is
the Magical American Congress of the United States.
There you go.
Right.
She's like 3/4 of the scenes is her on the verge of tears, like struggling to deal with the fact that she's got such a shit like rap.
Right.
And they're just not like the happy-go-lucky kids from Harry Potter. I really enjoy watching those people try and deal with the world. They don't feel like heroes, which is great. Like that's something new.
Like
they're very much
different,
the outsiders.
Yeah.
And there's like, so Tilly, on one of his last podcasts, was talking about the Harry Potter franchise, and he referred to it, it was just like a flippant remark, but he was like, it's a kids movie. And I don't think...
To be fair, he thinks that the game's for kids as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it's interesting that he wouldn't refer to Star Wars or something as a kids movie, whereas I would very much firmly put Harry Potter in the same bracket as Star Wars, that kids can enjoy them, those kind of movies, but also it's very much for adults.
Family movies.
They're family movies, but Fantastic Beasts, I think, treads a little bit, dances over the line of becoming very much more adult. There was a scene that literally made me gasp in it was so dark and violent and actually quite horrific. And I was really surprised that it was
the stuff that's not been advertised, and we've been looking through trailers today to find stuff for videos we're making. They really skip over half of this movie in the trailers. Like you don't know. I went in the day after the election. I'm not going to say which side I'm on, but I was sad, and I went in it going like really excited that I was going to see like happiness and excitement and wizardry and magic and escapism. Just like, firstly, heavily political, very much about American politics. Yeah. Secondly, religious fundamentalism. Thirdly, abuse. And you're like, oh my God. Like,
wow.
It has like the death penalty in it, like the American style. Suddenly you realise that there's like a death penalty in the American wizarding government.
And it's really unpleasant.
Really unpleasant. And you see the death room and stuff. And it's like, you never saw that in the Ministry of Magic. This is a really dark world.
It's really strange.
Well, that's got me more interested.
Yeah. It's a shame that it's just a bit of a mess. Like, it feels like could be two movies about the same place.
David Yates, in your interview with him at the junket, did address it, and that he talks about there's one moment where Eddie Redmayne performs a mating ritual with a thing called an Arumpin, which is basically a giant rhinoceros, and he sprays himself with musk and does this weird dance. Which is a weird scene.
I hated it.
And the next scene, you've got a character who's cowering in one of the most abusive familial scenes that you'll see in cinema.
Yeah.
And in
cinema.
Not in cinema.
It's not Precious.
It's a bit of a exaggeration. In child family movie.
It's certainly the darkest stuff we've seen in a Harry Potter.
That kind of flip, it's so sudden, you get whiplash.
Yeah.
It's like, and I feel like if she'd been streamlined, and David Yates really liked that about the movie. He specifically said that.
Weird that.
Yeah. Well, he's pointing out the criticism. Yeah, I just thought that was interesting.
But It's good. Like we've ragged on it a lot, but I think that's because we're fans.
Hopefully,
and we had high hopes.
Well, it's a good stepping stone for the next 4 movies.
Yeah, and like I do genuinely I do think if they have each movie is in a different city, meeting new people, seeing new ways of life, that's all I really care about, to be honest. Like they can be the stupid, boring Grindelwald stuff.
It's not boring.
I'm just, and but if it keeps doing that thing where it has got that Pottermore thing where it's filling in the blanks and making that world seem more like a world.
Yep.
I'm in. Like, I'm fine with that. It can be as messy as it likes, as long as I get to keep seeing more new, interesting stuff.
Yep.
That's great. I'm in. That's cool.
There you go. So that's out this week. Go and see it. Next week, we will be showing Final Fantasy to a bunch of people in London town.
In a cool venue.
Yeah, Hackney?
Probably.
Shouldn't say where it is in case a bunch of people turn up with
Good idea.
Invites, right? But anyway...
Birmingham.
Exactly. We are creating a little part of EOS, I believe that's the world.
It is.
So I know nothing about Final Fantasy.
15 or in general?
Any of them.
Okay.
But you know a bit about them. Do you, Alicia?
I've played them up to 10. I tried to play a bit of 14 and couldn't get into it.
Right.
Yeah,
So
after 10
what
it goes a bit
happened
downhill.
to 11, 12, 13?
Well, 11's another MMO. Toilet.
Yeah.
12, toilet. 13, never played it.
Wasn't there 13, 1 and 2 as well?
Yeah, they do, and there's 10, 2 as well.
That's part of the reason with Final Fantasy is like, I can't even keep up what's going on.
Unfortunately, what they've done is they got to 7 and then realised they shouldn't be numbering them. But they can't stop numbering them. They should all be called Final Fantasy. It should be like Final Fantasy EOS or Final Fantasy, that should be what it is.
Because there's nothing that really ties them together, right?
No.
Like barring characters, not characters, like creatures that appear in all of them for no real reason. Chocobos and cactuars and Tonberries. And Tonberry is the best monster in all of games, by the way. I just want to put that out there. Tonberry is a little green goblin in a brown coat, holding like a lantern and just a massive knife, and that's it. He just stabs you with it, and that's the end. Like everything else is using like spells. He's just like a little prick with a knife.
Shanking you.
It's horrible. I love him. I don't think he's in the game. I'm really sad. But anyway.
So you've played a few hours of 15.
Yeah, I think I've played about 7 hours now.
Is it that much already?
I've done 2 big previews of it. Yeah.
Wow.
Nuts.
And what are your kind of hopes and expectations?
Hopes and expectations are that it continues being as excellent as I think it is right now.
So
like, I think it's a really characterful, strange game. What again, the world is what I love about it. It's just America, but then they've dropped in like this high fantasy bollocks in strange places in it.
Like from the stuff that I've seen, and again trying to make sense of it, I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. Like, for me, it looks like a music video for a kind of emo group of teens driving around in a car that breaks down, and it's just like. But then, like some of the other footage I've seen of some of the different locations, I was like, wow, that game looks truly beautiful.
I think it's a stunning game. Yeah. And you're right, the music video thing is bang on.
Yeah.
These are the most millennial characters. I hate that word, but it really suits. Yeah. Like, they're constantly on their phones. They're always talking about video games they've been playing. Like, they're just like nerdy, stupid, naive idiots who, and I love them. I love spending time with them. Okay. They're so endearingly like dumb and and they feel so unaware. Like,
so how do they end up being heroes then?
Yeah.
The story is that Prince Noctis, who is the character you directly control, is being sent to his betrothed, like, princess wife-to-be from another kingdom in an arranged marriage.
Yeah.
And on the way there, this is the end of chapter 1, so I'm not giving anything away, and it's in Kingsglaive, which is the ludicrous crap animation they make. I shouldn't be saying this before we do the premiere, really, but it's not very good. As they go, at the end of chapter 1, it turns out that there's been a coup, this sort of militaristic nation that's been slowly taking over the world of Eos, takes over his home city and kills his dad, King Regis. And then it's about... So it turns from this road trip into essentially being a itinerant rebellion, which is quite fun.
Yeah.
So it gives you the reason to be still hovering around this open world for no reason at all.
Right, okay.
Which is great.
Yeah.
And it helps that the world is amazing. So we've done a few videos of this stuff. So we did like a huge tour of the world in the car, which could run out of gas, by the way, which is really annoying.
Really?
Yeah.
What happens if it runs out?
You can push it or get it towed.
Wow.
It's kind of great. I actually quite like that stuff.
Well, I like that stuff.
Because when it's nighttime, it's terrifying as well. Like, it gets way more dangerous and you can't see anything. It actually really reminds me of Dragon's Dogma, which is a game everyone ignored and I think is fantastic. Night, you just don't want to be out at night, which is great. So you're pushing the car and like the sun's going down. You're like, am I going to spend my last 100 gil on getting this car towed, or am I going to get to the gas station where I need to be?
Yeah.
Which I love. What the fuck was I talking about? I just like so many things.
Like time lapsing.
Oh yeah, and so but this is what the crux of what makes that world great is you can drive through this quite boring desert highway, listening to any track from Final Fantasy history on the radio.
Oh, that's cool.
You can buy CDs with entire soundtracks from the series, which is great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You're driving along, and then suddenly the camera like pans against your will to this giant crystal meteor sticking out of the world, and they're all like, it's been burning for years. You're like, what the hell is going on in this place? And then you stop and get like chili con carne from a diner come out, and there's like a truck full of swords that you can buy. And you're just like, what is this place? I love it.
It's so un-Final Fantasy and yet Final Fantasy, which I think is the point.
Yeah, it's what if a Final Fantasy world just sprung up in the middle of like Midwest America, which is kind of great. Like, what a strange thing to do.
Rather than doing something that's so like ridiculously fantastical that it's like you don't really relate to. It's like,
and
this is actually based on real life.
And navigating it makes sense. I know how a car works. I know how to get from one place to another. The rules make sense. Yeah. It's just that in between that gas station and that giant crystal meteor, there's like massive brontosauruses and dogs that are made of like, I don't know, fire and scales, and you're like, that's great. It's so much fun to be there.
Nice.
I'm really excited, and I'm really excited that we get to show it off.
Hopefully we'll see some of the people who listen to this podcast on Tuesday, but if not, we will be live streaming it, and we've got some really good exclusive footage coming up. I've had a little sneak preview of it, and even as someone who doesn't really know that much about Final Fantasy, I thought that looked pretty awesome.
I'm going to have a chat with old Hajime Tabata as well.
You are, yes.
It's going to be great. Nice. Me and Hajime.
Tabata-san.
So that is at 8 o'clock GMT next Tuesday.
You should tune in if you're not coming.
What time is that in the US? Midday PT.
Midday PT.
West Coast. I think that's it for Talking Boys. Should we go to feedback?
Yeah, can I quickly jump in with something that I suddenly thought that I probably should have put on the running order? But, so last week I was away for a week because I went on a trip to Malaysia to judge something called the International Mobile Gaming Awards. And I kind of thought while I was out there, I was like, I'd really like to talk about some of this really briefly on the podcast, because it was a really interesting insight into a games industry and culture that I'd never seen before. Like,
sorry, we're out of time though, so you can't.
But we're out of time, so like.
Thanks, that's it for this week's podcast.
Why did I bring you back those cookies? You deserve nothing. So it's interesting because there's 460 million people in Southeast Asia, right? And half.
Have you been researching your facts?
I actually know, genuinely. I had a really interesting chat.
That's nuts.
Going off of Final Fantasy, I had a chat with one of the guys who he works on one of the fringe studios, so not Square Enix, but the studios that Square Enix hires to do some of the legwork. So he was working on Final Fantasy, and he was saying about why he was American and why he came to Southeast Asia and why he's working there. And he was saying, out of a population of 460 million, half are under the age of 30, and making a game here is 4 to 6 times cheaper. So you've got this kind of where it's really easy to like spin out a game compared to here in the West. And there's a massive audience for it. And the games that we were seeing were really interesting because we were in Malaysia, which is this cultural melting pot in that it's been occupied so many times. It speaks like 4 different languages as its main language. And it was so varied. We were judging these mobile games, and you'd go from 1 minute being a kind of Total War-esque thing on iPad, this big sprawling epic strategy battler, to running a tofu stand on your iPhone, to this game that was amazing called Sarah is Missing, where you pick up an iPhone. Well, you pick up your phone and the screen looks like it's an iPhone, and the idea is that you found your phone on the floor, and you have this conversation with someone who's like, oh my gosh, you found Sarah's phone.
That sounds like the Mr. Robot game.
Which is
great.
It's similar to the Mr. Robot game, but way more fully fledged. So on the Mr. Robot game, when you were talking to this person, you could only choose from like pre-designated words. Whereas this, you physically type out
nice.
"Hi, I'm blah blah blah. Oh, whose phone is this?" And it responds to you, so it genuinely feels like you're talking to someone. And then you have to, everything's locked, and so they're like, "Oh, you're gonna have to go through her emails and try and find the passwords to her images thing." And so you start, just like really creative games that were genuinely fascinating.
Right.
It's really weird when you hear about that side of the industry that just doesn't care about coming over to us. Like, it doesn't need to. Yeah. Like how Remedy, the people who make Max Payne and Quantum Break, they're just making a Chinese game now. They're just making like a single player for a Chinese game just because that's worth way more money to them.
There you go.
And we're never going to play that.
Yeah. No.
Really cool. Like,
that's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like, that's fantastic. Like, it's fun to find out that there's this whole like set of stuff that you could be playing if only you could speak Korean.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, a lot of these games, all the games that we were playing were localised. They were in English, bar a couple. So, they're very much available.
There's the potential.
And I do wonder if in 10 years' time, or however long Moore's Law allows, that we'll find that the Southeast Asian games industry is going to grow into this mass, and suddenly we are going to start paying more attention to it. Because in terms of the developers that I spoke to, and the passion and the buzz and the talent, like, it was all there.
Yeah.
Definitely going to be keeping a closer eye on it.
Yeah.
I think especially with, like, obviously digital being more readily available now, and even when we go into the future. So you don't need distributors, you can get audiences straight away. I guess the difference is, like, if you're on iPhone, how do you get your game to stand out? How would I find out about that game that you just described?
Yeah.
When
discoverability
Apple
is
controls
insane.
Everything.
Oh, yeah. And when there's that many, like when it is 4 to 6 times cheaper to make a game out there, and you've got that many games being created, good grief, it's like, so hard to
even
stand
just
out.
Curating, like there's a reason IGN doesn't do that much mobile coverage, is because it's so hard to know what you should be covering, because there's too much.
We'll talk about Mario when that comes out on iOS. I guarantee
that's being talked about.
Yes.
And every so often you get, like, Reigns that came out this year, people have been talking about, which is something we talked about after Rezzed. And there's all these little bits and pieces that occasionally sort of float to the top, but judging it, who knew, like Flappy Bird? How the fuck did that happen?
Yeah.
Like, there's a million of those things. It's really strange.
I feel like people just make a deal at Crossroads with someone with an Apple logo on their chest and go, well, hey, top of the top grossing.
Tim Cook standing with a fiddle.
But cool, feedback.
Yes, you got the first piece.
So this is from Steve Aldridge. He says, hi, everyone. Firstly, I just want to say thank you. I've listened to the IGN UK podcast for a couple of years now, and it quickly became my favourite podcast.
Goddamn right.
Yeah, it did. Anyway, the reason I write is to ask about games. My family and I often have games nights where we play board games, old and new, cards and the like. So I wondered if anyone has anything like this with their family and friends. We're always on the lookout for new and interesting games to play, so I wondered if you had any suggestions.
This segues nicely into talking about games that you play at Christmas with your family who never play games. Do you do this? I do this.
Video games or board games?
Video games. But they fit the remit. Right. The two things that go down a storm every year with my family. Yeah. This is brilliant. The Wii U version of Wii Sports Golf. Right. My dad and uncle every year for the last 3 years since it's been out. Yeah. Because it's the one where
you put the pad
on the floor and you see the ball. So you can it's the best sports simulation that's ever been made. Yeah. Honestly. Yeah. Like, there's nothing else like it. Yeah. They just play out like full 18-hole rounds in the middle of our living room whilst everyone else gets drunk. It's great. The other thing is, have you ever played the Jackbox Party Pack?
Never heard of it.
It's amazing. Like, hands down, one of the best party games you can get on PS4. I think it's on Xbox One as well. It's a set of games that sort of steal from famous board games. So there's like a trivia game. You Don't Know Jack, which has kind of got big on iPhone a few years back. Right. And then there's one that's like Pictionary, and there's one that's like Boulder Dash. And essentially, it just comes up on your screen. You connect to the internet, and then everyone's smartphone is a controller.
Oh, okay.
That's
cool.
So, and everyone, my grandma knows how to use a smartphone. Yeah. So the whole family is playing like a trivia game. Yeah. But that's automated, so there's none of the hassle of getting shit out and doing it. It's brilliant. Like, that's what I play with my family.
That's cool.
Like, it's awesome. Really, really clever. I think there's 3 of them now. the party packs.
Nice.
Well worth it.
Yeah, there's loads of those on mobile. Like Space Team's another awesome game.
Oh my God, Space Team's brilliant.
Space Team.
But that's not really like family though, is it?
I've played it with my family at Christmas, but
Your family's cool.
my family, yeah. It just gets really heated.
It's not really easy for me because I've got a 6-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. So
Yeah, Space Team's probably not for them.
no.
What's it? Jingle the flux capacitors. What do you say, Daddy?
Scrabble is always my favourite.
Straight up. Scrabble's great.
Scrabble's an amazing
Can't beat
game.
it.
But I'm a stickler for rules, and
Of course you are.
Absolutely. Like my wife's family don't tend to adhere to the rules.
Oh, I'd
somewhat.
lose my mind.
So and normally when we start playing, I've had a few beers, so I normally get in a
Screaming at him. Standing on a chair.
Classic Christmas.
And the thing is, my wife says that I'm being overly competitive. I'm not. I just want to play by the rules. So
You want to be
fair.
competitive in general.
Well, I know that I will win if people stick to the rules.
Very good point. Very good point. Another great game that I've been playing recently. Have you played Snake Oil?
No.
Snake Oil's brilliant.
Is this a game or a board game?
Board game.
Board game.
So it's got the same idea as Cards Against Humanity, except it's not perverse and slightly crap and
slightly
relies
more
on people
family-friendly.
having an actual good sense of humour. Have you ever played Cards Against Humanity with terrible people?
Oh, absolutely.
It ruins the game.
It's just silly.
Yeah, when people are just like, arse. I hate that stuff. Snake Oil is a game where the person who gets to choose at the end of the round, so they've got to choose the best thing presented to them. They are a profession. So you pick up a card and you get to choose from one of each profession. There's a profession on each side, so it's like hunter or ballerina. Everyone else has a handful of cards that are just one-word nouns or adjectives. And you choose 2 of them, and that's the product you have to sell to the profession.
Right.
It's brilliant because it's kind of closed enough that no one has to like really improvise. You can just go, oh, here's a great product. There you go. Or you can turn it into like a big pitch that you sit there and make up a comedy sketch about or something.
Yeah.
But it's open enough that you can just get mad shit happening. It's brilliant. It's such a great idea for that kind of parlour game thing where everyone sits around and has an idea. So I would highly recommend Snake Oil.
I love my favourite board games to play are the ones where there's not a board.
Yes,
where
yeah.
It's just
That's very much.
Yeah, absolutely. The parlour games where what's that one where you're the Duke or the assassin?
As in like werewolf or
no, a werewolf is brilliant. I love that. Apparently they're making a VR version of that as well.
They are.
Which
It's
will be really
Ubisoft,
interesting. Yeah. But no, what's it called? It's like I can see the box. It's silver and shiny, and you're either the Duke or like the Contessa. Or the.
It's in the Resistance universe.
Yes!
But I can't remember what it's called.
God, it's like Resistance.
Coup.
Coup. Well done.
Coup's
well
very
done.
good.
That was like a thing of keyword countdown.
Yeah.
Just the level of gotta get there fast. But Coup's amazing because it's all about reading different people. So you'll be given 2 cards and you might have the captain and the Duke.
Yeah.
And there's like a load of coins, and when it's your turn, you can take coins. But depending on what cards you have powers. So if you're the captain, you can steal 3 coins off someone else from there. If you're the Duke, you can take 3 from the pile rather than 2. And but you don't have to stick to the cards that you've got in your hand.
Right.
So you can say, oh, I'm the Duke, so I'm going to take 3 coins instead of 2. But actually, you don't have a Duke. So if someone calls you out on it, then you lose your card. So it's this thing of bluffing, which is, I love that around Christmas, where you're like staring deep into your family's soul. Do I trust you?
I don't think your family is that cool now.
Then we go play Space Team.
Yeah.
Get furious.
Well, that's
at
it.
each other.
Coup's really interesting because isn't it just like 7 cards, and they all have a very set small rule.
Yeah.
And then the game plays out in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Just based on those tiny things. It's Dishonored again.
Yeah. In board game form.
It's all great.
So I think we've got like a few board games in there, haven't we?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
Steve can.
Dig into.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got an email from James Wilson, aka the Neon Idiot. I don't know why he calls himself
The Neon
that.
Idiot is the guy. He's the guy that took his first date to watch The Neon Demon, which is a fairly intense Nicholas Winding Refn film.
Right.
And
Okay,
needless to say, they did not see each other again.
Anyway, so he
He's the
recently
Neon
saw
Idiot.
a film called Circle on Netflix about a group of people who wake up not knowing where they are and are forced every 2 minutes to vote on who dies next.
Oh, Dale was talking about this. Dale really liked this movie.
You've ruined the point of this email then.
Sorry.
I was wondering if there are any films or TV shows that you really like that no one else even knows about.
Except for Dale.
Apart from Dale.
No.
Pontypool. Have you seen Pontypool?
No. Is
There we go. I win.
Has
It's
Dale-
not. It's Canadian.
What?
Dale,
Maybe Dale has.
Yeah, Dale's seen everything.
well,
It's a horror film set almost entirely in a radio studio as what seems to be a zombie apocalypse takes place outside. It was released weirdly as an audiobook and a movie at the same time, which is really strange. It's just really haunting and strange, and the kind of twist for why this infection is spreading is really, really odd, and quite. There's like definitely a metaphor to it that I really don't understand. But it's fantastic. It's really clever. I think there's a bit of shaky acting, like it's very much an indie flick, but the idea is strong enough and the kind of execution is haunting enough that it's really cool.
That's a really fascinating idea because that's telling the story. We've seen so many zombie apocalypse movies where it's always the person on the radio who says, and they're just a disembodied voice, to actually tell the story of that disembodied voice.
Yeah.
That's kind of a cool.
Yeah, it's really good. It's well worth watching.
There's a film that I really love called Wild Tales that I'm not sure whether loads of people have.
No,
I feel like I talked to you about this when it came out, and I can't remember whether you'd seen it or not, but a lot of people haven't heard of it. And it's an Argentinian film that came out.
Yes, I have. Sorry, when you were explaining it earlier, I couldn't remember what you were saying, because you said animal, so I was thinking of that. I have seen Wild Tales. It is good.
It's so good. It's so good.
Unfortunately, disqualified because I've heard of it.
Disqualified because I was about to say, you've ruined this. But it's amazing. It's really good. It's like...
disqualified?
I just wanted to explain about the film that I really like.
These are the rules. The neon idiot wrote the rules.
You and your stickler for rules. Fine, go watch it.
Thanks, James.
It's good.
It's got the wedding bit is the best.
The wedding bit is the best.
It's four short tales. Oh, six, sorry.
It's 6 short stories. All.
Wait, I want to talk about it too. I don't care. He's going to leave.
The rule book.
The rule book.
I'm going to turn this table over in a minute. God damn it.
I'll turn this podcast around. It's 6 short stories, all in Spanish, all dealing with a human vice.
You've got 10 seconds to talk about it.
And it's a black comedy. It's really, really dark. It deals with really dark human issues, but in a really funny way, and it completely defies expectations.
I will unplug your microphone if you continue talking about it.
It's on Amazon Prime. You can watch it.
Shut up. Any more feedback?
And we've read out James Isles.
Oh,
it's already done.
We could have spoken about that for a bit longer then.
We
but
could have done.
I think that's it.
Thanks a lot, neon idiot. Ruining it with your rules.
Well, it's his question. He can do whatever the heck he wants.
And unfortunately, you're here to enforce it.
Exactly. I'll be back same time next week just to get this show back on the road, for Christ's sakes. Anyway, thank you very much. And we will be back same time next week. Until then, goodbye.
Everyone remember to love by everyone else. It's lovely. Bye.